going. And so I had a similar, so before coming to Cornell, one of my first international development experiences was an internship abroad in Kenya. Before coming to Cornell, I also completed an international fellowship and one-year teaching contract abroad in China. And when I came here, I wasn't completely sure of what I wanted to do. I knew that I enjoyed my experience in Kenya. It was very rewarding, and I wanted to kind of maximize that. So in my mind, I thought I would eventually just work for an NGO or some sort of development organization in Africa. And then one of the first times that I used the OCPD, which is this office, so the OCPD office was to do a resume review. They have all these free services that are very helpful. You can schedule appointments. So I stopped by, and my appointment was luckily with Diane that day. And she looked at my resume and she helped me, tailor it, and she really brought out great points of this is what I see as an employer. And that was really cool because I never really thought of it from that perspective before. And then after that, she encouraged me. In the fall, there was an internship that Department of State was offering that I had no intention of applying for. And so Diane actually encouraged me to go ahead and submit my application, which I was so fortunate that she did. And so I was also very lucky to get that internship, and then, which I'll get to in a little bit. But my first year here at Cornell, I also took a career course with the OCPD, as well as the job club course, which is for second years, but I didn't understand that. And so I would still say both of those were very helpful services, which again get you kind of to focus on the issues, and these are things that you don't get to talk about in the classroom or any other spaces when you're a student here. And so it's useful just to have those meetings and have the resources, negotiating salaries, or those skills that I haven't really had a lot of experience with before. And then, so in the summer I went abroad and I did my internship at Embassy in Namibia, the Department of State. I was fortunate that it was a paid internship. I don't know how common those are, so maybe with the sequester they're not very this anymore. And then after that, I came back in the fall, and I did come back to Denver. I actually did our DC program, which is maybe a component you have or have not heard of. So that's also something that students can apply for. We recognize that we're here in the Rocky region, not on the East Coast. And so the DC program allows students to intern full-time, as well as taking night classes that count for credit, so you remain a Cornell student, and you complete credits for graduation while also getting that East Coast experience. And I started off at the White House Office of Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs, and then I made a difficult transition back. State had another opening at their Global Health Office, and my focus has been in global health in Africa, so it's much more aligned with my priorities in professional development. And so, again, that was something I talked to OCPD about, because they're so helpful with giving advice with, how do you act in this professional environment? What are the standard protocols for leaving a job or, my house? So I made that transition back to the Department of State and worked in the Office of the Secretary in their Global Health Office, which again, I think the sequester has cut off. So I did that, and with the DC program, it's important to recognize that another service that the OCPD gives is they help give funding to students. DC is a very expensive place, and so I was again fortunate, because we were full-time interning, unpaid, they gave a small stipend, and it helps cover some of the costs when you're there. And so those are kind of my main inputs. And then with postgraduate opportunities, what's really important to recognize is that the office isn't going to do the work for you. They're not going to apply or write the essays for you. But what is a very helpful resource is they make you aware of opportunities that have come up. And so the 2 fellowships I'm currently pursuing, one of them is the Fulbright Public Policy Fellow. It's actually a new program, and it's the 2nd year that's been running by the Department of State, and you get to work directly with the foreign government. Another one is with the Green Foundation in the one I'm starting in Bangladesh that you guys might be aware of. And so both of those fellowship opportunities I didn't know about until OCPD actually posted about them. And so again, that's an important resource for they make you aware of these opportunities, and they'll help you through the application process as much as they can. Mock interviews is a service that I think is really helpful that Laura mentioned. And so I've said this before to friends, and I promise I'm not being paid to say this, but I just to have this office. You know, if I wasn't taking classes and not doing anything else at Cornell, it's been really helpful just to have this office be here for your professional development. And some of you might empathize with this feeling, but when I came here, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, or you know, if you don't come in with a very specific groundwork and strategy like Laura had, I think that this is a good place for you to kind of develop your interests and, you know, pursue the things that you really want to do. So yeah, I'll probably try to be around later for lunch. If there's any questions. Also, some of you might be in a similar spot that Laura and I were in. Our main choices when we were coming was between the University of Denver and American University, and so you might be in a similar choice between, you know, sort of East Coast schools and going here. And after doing the DC program, I'm so happy that I ended up choosing the Cornell School. Like, before I thought it was a good choice, after the DC program, I knew it was a better choice. And so I'd be happy to maybe at lunch or later in the day, if you're interested in that, if you're sitting in a similar position, we can talk about the differences between going to school and DC. I would recommend it.
Okay, so I think a theme that you might have gleaned from all of us talking is that we really are an office that wants to work with students from the moment you matriculate all the way through. And we are also here for alumni as they rethink their jobs or are ready to move on. So, you know, we really see the Cornell community as starting with the first day here and then through that whole journey, and as you graduate and become alumni. And we have such fabulous alumni that give back to this community, and I think in part it's because they were so engaged and had alumni give back to them when they were students. The last thing I want to say before we open it to Q&A is that we are hiring students to work in our office next year. We have 4 distinct positions: an assessment assistant, a marketing assistant, an office manager, and a peer advisor. And if you have been notified that you have work study, we have created an opportunity tomorrow, 2 to 3, to just drop by our office and chat with us more about these positions. And if you have a resume, you're welcome to drop it by, but it's not required. I will also be here at lunchtime, and a couple of our staff will be at the wine and cheese and can answer questions then as well. But we really hope that if you have work study, that you can drop by our office tomorrow between 2 and 3. And so now I want to open it up for questions and invite our whole panel here to stand over here if it's easier for you to see them, and answer any questions that you have for our staff or for our 2 students. And so Schwinn has to run back to class, and thank her for coming, but she will be back a little bit at lunchtime and then at the wine and cheese this afternoon as well. Okay, so I saw a hand go up in the back. Yes. I'll try to repeat the question here. There were 2 questions. One was, how do we help prepare students for the PMF program? Was that the first one? Okay, and then the second one is, how do we kind of sell the Cornell brand or Cornell, the skills our Cornell students get to employers? Is that right? Okay, so I'll take a stab at the first one, and then maybe one of my colleagues can take a stab at the second one. So the PMF, for those of you who don't know, is a Presidential Management Fellowship, and that is the flagship, highly competitive postgraduate program for those with a graduate degree to enter into a leadership position within the federal government. And they've just changed that program slightly from years past. This year, it had been open to recent graduates only. By recent, I mean just graduated within the last year, and they've opened it up to basically the last 3 years. We really, really encourage all of our students to apply for that program and help students through that application process from the beginning through the next stages, which is the interview, and we do all sorts of prep sessions, and we've been very successful in the past. We are very competitive with our other APSIA schools, which is the Association for Professional Schools and International Affairs, and maybe looking at other APSIA schools as you consider where to go for your master's degree. So we all compare notes, and we're very competitive with them, and we also have been very fortunate to have former PMFers help our current applicants apply every year. So does that answer your question? Okay, and then the other, do you want to take a step in there?
Okay, so the other question is, how do we sort of sell the Corvell brand to employers? Well, that sort of depends on who the employer is and what degree is focused on. As you guys will see with this, we do not have, all degrees have slightly different curriculum. And one of the things that is different about Corvell than some of the other schools is that you are somewhat able to sell or develop your own skills. But what I can guarantee is that all of you will come out with very strong analysis skills, strong writing skills. Most of you will have strong project management skills, and depending on the different degrees of where the focus is, some of you may have a very strong stats background. You all will have very strong writing skills. So those are the basic skills that I sort of sell, but what also goes is that's the importance of the Career Connections trip. Not only are you guys getting to be in the door with the employer, but the employers have opened the door, and with that whole program, they've seen resumes, which we've helped you craft and we've approved. And so it's sort of like they're inviting you into their house, so to speak. And I have never yet been let down by a group of students of your ability to impress them. And so it's sort of bringing what we offer right into their home. And then they're impressed to see the quality that they are. That's part of the preparation for those programs as we teach you how to network, talk with you about asking appropriate questions, so that you really are presenting yourself as yourself, not me trying to say, oh, well, this is who they are. You're actually in front of them, able to make those connections. So does that answer your question?
Any other questions? How about right there in the back? You want to stand up and answer a question?
Sure. I just noticed in the last presentation, there was more of an emphasis on private industry. There was, what, 30-odd% was the private industry. And I was curious, how has that changed over time? I know a lot of folks are interested in government, they're interested in NGOs. How have you seen these skills you've been talking about? How marketable are Cornell graduates using those skills for the private industry if the government doesn't work out?
Let me try to repeat the question here. The question is about, are we seeing a trend and or a shift in where our what sectors our graduates go into? Is that right? Okay. Do you want to take that?
So that is a little bit of an anomaly. I will tell you, we track this data. That data we showed you is 1 year out, but we track this for many years. In the past, generally we've been about a third, a third, a third. And that's a pretty strong trend, and it's always slightly by a third, a third, a third. I mean, a third government, a third nonprofit, and a third private. That's been the trend for many, many years. I think what happens with that is that there are many government contractors that contract out much of the analysis work, much of the project management work. And I think that is a reflection on that kind of trend with government going on. I think in the past year it's also a trend with business revving up. So it is a little higher than it's normally been, but generally for the past 10 years, and I've been here 7 years, but for the past 10 years, the trend for